They'll find them. Trust me.
Tonto?
Tonto.
He's right there.
Give me the high side.
Tonto.
All right, everybody have their seats, please.
Hey, you wanna come over here?
John wants some attention, and he's not getting any. For those of you in the audience, in case you haven't guessed yet, we're doing something with this guy to the left. Actually, Jack French wrote a parody of the Lone Ranger last year to be performed at Michigan State University. And he's going to tell you more about this in advance. But this is the script he wrote that has not been performed due to circumstances beyond his control, but will be performed tonight with the aid of about 100 cast members. Because Jack doesn't know how to write small scripts for 2 or 3 people. And Jack, you want to come up and get everybody Lone Rangered up?
Okay. Well, as you've guessed, there's a new sheriff in town, and it's Jeff Whipple. And Jeff has decreed that all programs will be exactly 45 minutes. And that means that since the Lone Ranger program that we're going to do for you is 29 minutes and 32 seconds, I'll give you 14 and a half minutes of the history of the Lone Ranger. Now, they were warned, but they're so anxious to get up for the photo ops. Anyway, it's the origin of the Lone Ranger traces back to the cheapest guy in town, George W. Trendle, whom I call the miser of Motown because he proves it every chance he got. He started off in the 1920s. He owned a chain of movie theaters, and they were showing silence. And then the talkies came in. So it would cost George W. Trendle umpteen thousand to put sound equipment in. What would he do? Sell the theaters. They're not putting any more money in these theaters. So he's got a bundle of money to invest. And he promptly buys a radio station in Detroit, Michigan, and changes its call letters to WXYZ, the last word in radio. And he was going to run this thing to basically make money for himself and his banker cronies, and they succeeded beyond their wildest estimates. In starting off producing dramatic programs, they ended up hiring a guy from Buffalo, New York. His name was Fran Stryker. Fran Stryker was pounding away at his typewriter and selling dramatic scripts to any radio station that could afford his price, which wasn't that much. He was charging $4 for the script to a 1-hour show. So he was producing these, and WXYZ contracted with him to do 3 series for them, which he did. And then WXYZ wanted to come up with a Western hero. So they asked Fran Stryker to create one for them. And he was always interested in silver as a concept. In fact, one of his heroes in Covered Wagon Days, another series, used silver-tipped arrows. So he came up with the concept that this would be a ranger who had used silver bullets. Now, his horse wasn't named Silver at first, however. It was named Dusty, but that didn't last very long. At any rate, the Lone Ranger debuted on January 31st, 1933, without Tonto. And after writing about 10 or 12 episodes, Fran Stryker realized there's nobody from the Lone Ranger to talk to except his horse, and that's a little artificial, so they brought in Tonto. Now, Tonto at first was portrayed in the radio premiums that WXYZ gave out as riding on the same horse as the Lone Ranger. And the kids were shocked and appalled. How dare you put 2-1 on that little horse? So they gave Tonto a mule. The mule was named Sabo, and actually that was Tonto's mount for 2 years, until 1935, when wrote in Whitefeller as Tonto's new horse. That lasted another 3 years. And then finally in 1938, Get 'em Up Scout, and that remained for the rest of the series. There are 4 different actors that played the Lone Ranger the first month, but despite that, it was a very successful program almost immediately. They made one mistake in the publicity. They got whoever was playing the Lone Ranger to get on the radio and say to the kids in Detroit, I've got a Lone Ranger gun I'm going to send to each one of you. I've got 300 of them here, so the first 300 people that write in will get a Lone Ranger gun. They got 29,000 responses. So you had the better part of 29,000 kids who were pretty ticked off, the 300 only got it. They held a Lone Ranger personal appearance at Bell Island Park and expected about 500 people, and 10,000 people showed up. Now the guy playing the Lone Ranger at that time was a little law student from Wayne University, Earl Grosser, who didn't look at all like the Lone Ranger. But the announcer did, Brace Beamer, who was a big guy. So they would dress him up in a costume similar to this probably, and he would make the personal appearances. The thing was such a great success that Trendle decided immediately that there was a great deal of money to be bought or brought into his coffers. So the first thing to do is cut Fran Stryker out. So under penalty of firing Fran Stryker as the chief writer for WXYZ, Stryker had to sign over all the rights to the Lone Ranger, and Trendle took it from there. Trendle was the type of guy who not only amplified Scrooge, but occasionally acted like him. In December of 1936, on Christmas Eve, he fired 22 employees in order, well, things are tough all over, this is the Depression, get out there. You know. So that's the type of guy he was. By 1939, Fran Stryker was then not only writing The Lone Ranger, but a daily series, the Sergeant Press of the Yukon, originally called Challenge of the Yukon, for a total of 60,000 words a week. And one statistician figured out that that meant he was writing the entire Bible every 3 months. Earl Grosser died in an auto accident April 8th, 1941. And they created a 1 week in which the Lone Ranger had been injured and could barely talk. And then when he finally recovered, he became the announcer Brace Beamer, who then stayed on the air as the Lone Ranger until the series went off the air in 1954. An Irish actor by the name of Fred McCarthy, who used John Todd as his stage name, was Tonto from the very first day until the last day. And Todd was in his late 80s at the time that the Lone Ranger went off the air, which was September 3rd, 1954. And a total of 3,377 episodes of The Lone Ranger were aired during that time period. And then the final straw and insult to Fran Stryker comes in 1954 when George W. Trendle sold all the rights to The Lone Ranger to the Rather Corporation for a sum of $3 million. And he said, well, gee, Fran Stryker had something to do with this, so he gave him a bonus of $4,000.
Wow.
That's George W. Trendle, the miser of Motown. Now, specifically for tonight's program, this is not a Lone Ranger show. This is a Lone Ranger parody, which is quite a different thing. Kathleen O'Reilly gave us the impetus for for MSU in June of last year, a thing called Grandparents University. Grandparents University is when grandparents and grandkids show up at the Michigan State campus, put them in the dorm, they go to classes together, they attend archery and computer skills and whatever, a variety of programs. And then in the evenings they have special programs for the two. So they need some type of program that appeal both to grandparents and to grandkids. And Kathleen and I came up with this concept of the Lone Ranger because after all, Michigan State is not that far from Detroit, his archival home. And the only stipulation was the script had to have plenty of Michigan State University references, which it does. Some of them will be unfamiliar to you. Like, for example, there's a character on the campus called Johnny Spirit, who paints himself green and silver and white and drives around on his bicycle, encouraging great spirits. There's, of course, a big statue of Spartan, which is the mascot for Michigan State, and we'll refer to that in the script. We'll refer to several alumni from Michigan State University in the script. And so what we're bringing is the Lone Ranger into a modern era. This was to happen last June, so we'll have some time projections on this for you. At any rate, that's what you're going to hear tonight, a Lone Ranger parody on the Michigan State University campus. Okay? I will welcome my cast up to the microphone of their choice.
We're going to need to close the door. I know it's hot in here, but keep the sound from outside getting in. I'll do it. Thanks.
A cloud of dust and a hearty hi-yo Silver, the Lone Ranger. With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains, led the fight for law and order in the early western United States. Nowhere in the pages of history can one find two greater champions of justice. So return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. Out of the past come the thundering hoofbeats of the great horse Silver. The Lone Ranger rides again.
Come on, Silver. Let's go, fellow. Hi-yo, Silver. Away!
We find the Lone Ranger and Tonto in the frontier town of Little Mesa, where they are in the office of Sheriff Calamity Sparks. The three are sorting through the old wanted posters of fugitives from the law and tossing out those that the Lone Ranger and Tonto have captured in recent months.
Gracious, you fellas sure made my job easy. 3 months ago, you brought Slippery Jake into custody.
Him very bad man, but cannot rob banks in jail.
The wheat of crime bears bitter fruit, but not behind bars.
Here's another poster we can toss. 2 months ago, you two captured Big Ben Franklin, the counterfeiter. I'm glad we didn't have to worry about him no more.
Not hard to overtake this bad man, dragging heavy printing press with him.
Just imagine the extra weight his poor horse was carrying.
Well, let's see. I think this is the last one. Was it 2 weeks ago you brought in Ace Hanlon, the rustler?
Yes, but to be fair, we had help from Red Ryder.
Shucks. The whole frontier is mighty grateful to all you folks who help the law and keeping the peace.
We do what we can, Sheriff, but now Tonto and I will be heading back to our camp. It's getting late.
Goodbye for now, Lone Ranger and Tonto, and thanks again for all your hard work.
Goodbye, Sheriff. Let's go, Tonto. Easy there, big fella.
Get up, Scout.
Hi-yo, Silver!
Lone Ranger and Tonto rode Silver and Scout out of Little Mesa on the trail heading west. They were soon within reach of their camp in the shadow of Rocking Horse Mountain. As they rode up to their campsite, Tonto's keen eye caught the sight of something unusual on a distant crest.
Look, Kemosabe, smoke puffs on mountain.
You're right, Tonto. Puffs of white smoke. Aha, a new pope has been elected.
Wait. Wait, white smoke changing to green smoke now.
Oh, they must have chosen an Irish pope.
No, white and green mean message from Michigan State University. We see smoke signals.
Can you translate the signals, Tonto?
Yes, Kemosabe. Message say, MSU need urgent help from Western hero and his faithful Indian companion.
Well, this is serious business indeed.
Meanwhile, on the other side of Rocking Horse Mountain Ridge, Red Rider, a tall cowboy in a fancy shirt, is on his horse, watching Little Beaver, a young Navajo brave, shooting a bow and arrow at a target tacked on a nearby cactus.
Oh, me miss! Try again now.
Bullseye. That's good shooting, son.
Bet I could hit target every time if I had Red Ryder BB gun.
Sorry, but they're too dangerous. You'll shoot your eye out.
All the other kids have bows and arrows and BB gun.
Well, if all the other kids jumped off a cliff, would you? Wait a minute. What's that smoke up on that mountain crest?
Me sees smoke signals.
Who is the message for? Can you read it?
I savvy. Message say, MSU need urgent help from Western hero and his faithful Indian companion.
Well, if that don't beat all.
We hit the trail for Lansing now, Red Ryder?
Maybe, but that message could be meant for two other people. We gotta make sure. When I was rounding up strays the other day, I noticed the Lone Ranger and Tonto were camped on the other side of Rocking Horse Mountain. Supposing we mosey over there.
You betcha, Red Ryder. Get him up, papoose.
Roll, Thunder, roll!
There's more excitement ahead, boys and girls. But now I want to tell you about the best breakfast food in the land. Kix Corn Puffs are not only delicious, they're packed with vitamins and minerals to build up your strength and vitality. Just pour out a bowl, add milk or cream, and pile on some sliced fruit. Man, oh man, you're going to have the best morning meal anyone can serve. So make sure Grandpa or Grandma buys you a box of Kix Corn Puffs today. Tomorrow for sure. And it's okay to share some of this cereal with your grandparents. They need energy too. Red Ryder and Little Beaver located the Lone Ranger and Tonto at their campsite, and the four had a long conversation about their response to the smoke signals. It was decided that the masked man and his Indian companion would go to Lansing, while Red Ryder and Little Beaver would keep the peace in the west. So the next morning, having breakfast over their campfire, the daring and resourceful Indian of the plains was discussing travel plans with his faithful masked companion.
Lansing, Michigan, 2,000 miles as crow flies, and many more miles as horse gallops. But MSU need us right away.
You're right, Tonto. Now we need to make haste to get there, so we'll take the train. There's a station we can board at Angry Gulch. Silver and Scout will ride along in a boxcar while we're in a passenger car.
That very expensive way to travel.
When you own a secret silver mine, you don't skimp on transportation costs. Besides, This will be less dangerous to our horses.
Yes, Kimosabe. Journey will take us through the lands of the Minnesota Gophers and Wisconsin Badgers.
Exactly what I meant. A horse could break a leg in one of their holes in the ground. And don't forget the land of the Buckeyes.
Tonto know what Buckeye is.
Actually, nobody knows what a Buckeye is. Not even in Ohio. And nobody even cares about a Wolverine.
When we get to train station, passengers will see your mask and think we train robbers.
I don't believe so, Tonto. Railroad conductors are widely traveled, and they would know us by name or reputation.
If not, you give Silver Bullet.
Yes, my calling card would be recognized by any conductor.
As they planned, the Lone Ranger and Tonto arrived at the railroad station at Angry Gulch and purchased passage for themselves and their horses on the train. Silver and Scout were tethered in a boxcar, while the masked man and Tonto took seats in a forward compartment.
Tickets, please. Tickets, please. Oh, a masked man.
Not to worry, sir. The Silver Bullet will tell you who I am.
Of course, Lone Ranger. I should have recognized you. And this must be Tonto. I welcome both of you to the Michigan Central Railroad. Tickets, please. Tickets, please.
Gosh, Mr. Lone Ranger, you're mighty famous. My name's Sonny Roberts.
Hello there, youngster. I'm glad to know you.
Tonto glad too.
My grandpa was pretty famous too. He pitched for the Philadelphia Phillies. Robin Roberts.
I sure do remember him, Sonny. He pitched the Phillies Whiz Kids to the National League Championship in 1950. A fine man.
A lot of people don't know he went to Michigan State University, where he was captain of the basketball team for 2 seasons.
Him great at many different sports, like Jim Thorpe.
Golly, why is the train stopping, mister?
Just be calm, folks. There was a log across the tracks, and now 4 outlaws are trying to rob the gold in the mail car.
Tonto, we're needed. Sonny, you stay here. Conductor, have you a long rope I could use?
Sure, there's one we keep in this utility closet. Here you are, Ranger.
Just what I need. Now, where's the mail car?
It's the second to last car before the caboose.
Let's go, Tonto. Make your way to the back of the train. I'll go the same way, but on the train roof. When you hear my whistle, smash the nearest window to distract the outlaws.
Yes, Kimosabe.
The nimble Lone Ranger climbed up on the roof of the car carrying the long rope and walked quickly to the rear of the train, ducking to avoid detection. When he reached the mail car, he whistled softly. The distracted outlaws never saw the lasso the Lone Ranger tossed around them until all 4 were pinned together on their horses.
Now, Tonto, get all their guns. We'll lock them up in the mail car next to the gold they were trying to steal. You'll be turned over to the sheriff at the next station stop.
We'll get back to our exciting Western story in just a minute. But first, are you feeling a little out of sorts? Is your system a little sluggish? Is irregularity a problem in your household? Well, then you should know that the entire medical community believes that the most effective way of taking a laxative is by chewing it. And friends, Phenamint chewing gum is the most modern way of ensuring regularity. Grandparents and grandkids alike enjoy its wonderful flavor. It's safe and non-habit forming for every member of the family. So chew Phenamint gum and see how quickly it restores you to good health and vitality. Kids, ask Grandpa to buy you some tomorrow. If he won't, ask Grandma. The long train ride continued on to Michigan with no further nefarious incidents involving crime or injustice. When the train finally pulled into the East Lansing station on Harrison Street, the Lone Ranger and Tonto got Silver and Scout from the boxcar.
This place has changed a lot since we were last here, Tonto. Even the name is different. Wasn't this campus called State Agricultural College?
Oh, that's right. And very fine name. Good for farmer and rancher.
Let's walk our horses on the campus so we won't attract too much attention.
Many new buildings here. We're livery stable.
They must have torn it down and built Epley Center on the same spot. But where's the stagecoach relay station?
Gone too. Look, in its place, Kresge Art Center.
Well, we've got work to do. Let's find the president's office and find out what he wants us to do.
Ask students. They know everything.
Pardon me, ma'am. We're looking for the office of the president.
Are you delivering those horses to her?
No, but we come on a matter of some urgency.
Well, her office is in the administration building over there. Do you have an appointment? She's very busy.
She will see us. She sent smoke signals.
Okay. Be sure to check in with security first.
Thank you, miss. It would appear, Tonto, that the president is a woman.
Lone Ranger speak truth.
Let's go find out what she wants.
Two stalwart fighters for justice walked their horses over to the administration building. Since they could find no hitching post, they tethered Silver and Scout to some nearby bushes and were soon ushered into the office of the president.
I'm Luanna Simon, and let me introduce my coordinator of alumni affairs, Sarah Jones. We're very glad you came so soon.
Tonto and I are pleased to meet you both.
We certainly hope you had no trouble on your journey.
Nothing but a routine railroad robbery by 4 desperate outlaws trying to steal gold in the mail car.
We capture bad men and turn them over to sheriff.
You two surely live up to your reputation. MSU is grateful you've responded to our request for help.
Tonto and I have been wondering just what assistance you require of us.
Of course. Let me explain. We have a serious problem with cattle rustling here on campus.
Very serious. Our monetary losses are enormous. If this continues, it will cut back on our funding for Grandparents University.
Where cows stolen.
From the Beef Cattle Teaching and Research Center. Here, I'll show you its location on this campus map.
I see. And how long have these dastardly thefts been going on?
As far as we know, they started 6 weeks ago.
Sound very bad, Kimosabe.
You're right, Tonto. Madam President, what, if anything, has your security force learned about this rustling?
I'll ask our security chief, Bubba Smith, to brief you on that. He's in the next room. Chief Smith, this is the Lone Ranger and Tonto. They'd like an update on the rustling of our cattle.
I'm glad to meet you, Chief. I'm a fan of all your movies.
Hollywood never treated me quite right, so I'm glad to be back here on the MSU campus, catching real criminals.
That I can understand. Hollywood never treated me fair either.
Chief, we come to help catch rustlers.
What can you tell us about the crime so far?
Well, not much, I'm afraid. Years ago, they called us Cow College because of our great agriculture department. But we've lost 113 head of cattle in the past 6 weeks. Probably the rustling has occurred at night, but we're not positive. Downright mysterious.
Locks broken on their pen?
Hoof prints show direction of cattle when leaving?
Nope, nothing like that. No one messing with the locks. Hoof prints show them only going into the research center.
So you can see why we need your help. Please say you will.
If you don't solve this, Grandparents University may become just a distant memory.
Don't worry, ladies. Tonto and I will do our utmost. In fact, we will leave you now and get started.
Excellent. 2 men of action. I've made arrangements for you to live in home dorms during your investigation.
Now, that's kind of you, but Tonto and I always sleep under the stars. There's something about using a saddle for a pillow that makes a man's brain more agile.
We saw a nice campsite next to Federal Credit Union on Farm Lane.
Whatever you wish. We wish you well and expect timely reports on your progress.
To be sure, ladies. Goodbye for now.
Now, here's some thrilling news for all of you Lone Ranger fans. You remember just a few weeks ago when the Lone Ranger and Tonto captured a large gang of cattle rustlers? They brought these outlaws to justice when Tonto pretended to be a rustler and joined the gang. Then he and the Lone Ranger sent messages to each other by means of a rare old Indian ring using a code that Tonto taught the Lone Ranger. Remember? When the ring was held up to the light, mysterious signs and symbols appeared in its transparent stone. Would you like to have one of these exciting code rings? They're not for sale at any store, but you can get one simply by eating Cheerios. All you have to do after you finish a box of Cheerios is tear off the top which says Lone Ranger Code Ring and send it to the address printed on the label. Write your name and address on the indicated lines and enclose 25 cents in coin or stamps to cover the mailing costs. Your Lone Ranger Code Ring will be shipped to you immediately. The Lone Ranger and Tonto, having conducted a thorough search of the Beef Cattle Teaching and Research Center and finding no clue to the rustlers, are asleep in their camp. Their bedrolls are close to the credit union building, while Silver and Scout are nearby. It is just after midnight and a light rain.
What is it, big fellow? Robbers inside? What do they look like? Oh, good work. Wake up, Tonto. 2 robbers are in the credit union. One is tall, thin, with mustache. The other, short, chunky, has red hair.
Not robbers. Robbers take by force. Burglars take by stealth.
Well, Silver doesn't know the difference yet. Anyway, we must capture them.
Yeah, we can use old Indian trick. Chase them to exit with no escape. I get shotgun shells from saddlebags and cut out buckshot. Scatter them by back door. You go to front door and scare them to run out back.
Then they'll fall on the buckshot, and we'll capture them.
Tonto completed his part of the plan, scattering the buckshot at the back door. Meanwhile, the ranger was at the front.
Come out, evildoers, or face my 6-gun justice.
The fleeing burglars fell down, exiting the back door, and Tonto quickly took them into custody. Then he and the Lone Ranger turned them over to MSU security.
Well, Tonto, I guess we can get some well-deserved sleep now.
The valiant companions were up at the crack of dawn and planning their investigative steps.
Then it's agreed. I'll go back to the area of the thefts and see what I can learn from any witnesses in that vicinity.
Tonto, go to top of Beaumont Tower, survey campus for suspicious activity, and try to determine likely route of stolen cattle.
Right. And we'll meet again at noon at the Sparty statue.
The 2 companions split up and went about their business, determined to put a stop to this crime and save Grandparents University. By noon, both were back at the Spartan statue. The area was crowded with students. The Lone Ranger and Tonto found a spot near the statue where they could confer in relative privacy.
Good view from Beaumont Tower. Tonto see far.
Excellent. What did you find out?
No sign of cattle thieves, but only way cattle could be moved without being seen is Red Cedar River.
You're right, Tonto. And that would leave no hoof prints.
Kimosabe find clues?
I did, Tonto. I met a bicyclist, all painted in green and white. He calls himself Johnny Spirit.
What strange man tell you?
He said he travels the campus a great deal. The only unusual thing he observed near the Beef Cattle Teaching and Research Center was a man in a top hat.
Was Hat Man alone?
No, he had 2 companions. And Johnny only saw them late at night.
Could be the rustlers.
Maybe, but we'll need more proof. And how did the rustlers open the lock to the cattle pens? And why are there no hoof prints leading away from the center?
Maybe rustlers drive cattle backwards?
That would be very difficult. You know how obstinate cows are.
Some worse than mule.
That man in the top hat may be our best lead. Perhaps he's an entertainer. You check with the fraternities as to whether they've hired anybody like that, and I'll check out the sororities.
Wait, how come Lone Ranger always get best leads?
All right, you take the sororities. The important thing is that we identify or eliminate the man in the top hat. We'll meet tonight at 6 p.m. at the Magic Johnson statue.
Oh, Tonto be there.
The Lone Ranger and Tonto met at the Magic Johnson statue that night and compared what they had learned. After a quick supper, they went to the main library to read the local newspapers and periodicals about magicians in the area. When they finished, they made a telephone call to Chief Smith and then turned in for the night. Next morning, President Simon was in her office conferring with Sarah Jones. The receptionist announced that a masked man and an Indian were here to see her.
Lone Ranger and Tonto, please come in. We're delighted to see you both again.
Thank you. We've come to make a report to you.
I hope you've made some progress on the case.
Much better. We solved case.
Remarkable. Tell us all about it.
Well, in all modesty, it was just a matter of sorting out the clues. To begin, there was no damage to any of the locks. So that meant either a spare key
Or someone picked lock.
A spare key would mean someone inside MSU was the thief. That's impossible.
Exactly. All your people are faithful and trustworthy. So some unscrupulous person picked the lock.
Then we have clue of hoofprints showing cows only entering research center unless they walking backwards.
But cows don't walk backwards, do they?
They can, but are very unlikely to do so unless they're hypnotized. So what we have here is a thief who can pick locks and hypnotize cattle. In other words, a magician.
This magician be Presto the Peerless.
I don't understand. Are you saying that this Mr. Presto stole all our cattle? How did he get them off campus?
At night, on small barges down the Red Cedar River. He's in police custody now and has confessed.
Presto is magician, hypnotist, and escape artist from Padlocks, wear top hat. Tried to be hired by sororities and fraternities for weekend entertainment, but MSU students way too smart for him.
You say he's in custody now?
Yes, we provided all of our evidence to Chief Smith last night, who then worked with local police. They located and arrested Presto and his two accomplices early this morning.
All your cattle safe and will be returned.
Presto had not sold any of your cattle yet. He had trucked them over to Hazlitt and had them temporarily in an enclosure, which he pretended was going to be a petting zoo for very tall children.
Lone Ranger and Tonto, we are forever in your debt.
And so is Grandparents University.
You are very welcome. Farewell.
Goodbye to ladies.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, and safe travel.
Our work here is done. Let's go, Tano.
Hey, who was that masked man?
That was a Lone Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver! Away!
The Lone Ranger has been brought to you by Cheerios and Kix Corn Puffs, the breakfast cereals from General Mills, and Phenamint Laxative Gum. This program, carried on the Blue Network of NBC, the National Biscuit Company, originated in the studios of WMSU in East Lansing. It featured Dennis Roma as the Lone Ranger and Henry Ickes as Tonto. Sound effects created and executed by Mark and Marcia Bush, assisted by John Abbott. Our studio engineer was Chuck Langdon, assisted by his lovely wife, Joni. The supporting cast tonight included Sandy Pitts Malone as Sheriff Calamity Sparks, Lawrence Kandrak as Red Ryder. Wendy Wilmer was the voice of Little Beaver, Sonny, and co-ed Tiffany. Jeff Whipple played the conductor. Mary Whipple was MSU President Luana Simons. Kathleen O'Reilly played Sarah Jones. John Abbott was the voice of Bubba Smith. The announcer has been Jack French. This is a National Biscuit Company production.
Before we break up, Mark Bush wants to do a little presentation of his own.
Jack, step up here for me just a minute. And Dennis, where'd he go? There he is.
Where'd he go?
I put off on silver.
You put a lot of work in on this, and you really nailed the high-O silver.
Which
The
you
most
would
important.
know.
Yes, I would. So there's a silver bullet to put in your gun belt. And Jack, you've made a lot of effort, put a lot of effort into this thing, starting back in May or so, and appreciate your direction and the effort that you put into the script, and there's a silver bullet for you to carry about.
Thank you very much.
Well, what a great way to start the year off with a bang. So next month,
Next month, we don't have a program yet, so somebody please volunteer, or I'm gonna do it.
please, volunteer. John will do a quiz. That's one way to
If we don't have a volunteer, John will do the quiz and the 15 minutes of radio.
Okay, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Good job.
That was great, Jack.